happy to check out both.
Won't be offended.
We will not be offended. So Elisa Galopani is our pharmacist. She's phenomenal. She's a clinical pharmacist. A lot of people don't know why there's a pharmacist in my office, but they work directly with patients. And she helps a lot of my patients with chronic disease such as diabetes, hypertension, to help manage the disease. Really not even just the medicine, but it's the medicine part of it. And for hepatitis patients, she is a critical person for helping patients access their medicines, stay compliant, and she works out with, she works closely with them to make sure they don't have side effects and they understand. So I'm really excited to have her there, and then Michaela will follow. And I'm going to go. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Wong. Thank you, everyone, for spending your Saturday here. Like Dr. Wong said, my name is Elisa Galopani. I'm a clinical pharmacist in the Center for Asian Health. I'm also Fairleigh Dickinson University faculty, so I take up to 3 students at a given time, and I kind of mentor them into what it's like to be a pharmacist in this type of setting. We're also starting a residency program, so we'll be training more pharmacists to do jobs kind of like what I do with Dr. Wong. So today what we're going to do is talk a little bit about how I'm able to access medications for some of our patients. A lot of people ask me how I get affordable prices or coupons, and most of the resources I use are publicly available, so I would love to be able to share those with you today. Before I do that, we're going to talk a little bit very briefly about how drug prices are set, because I think it gives us an idea about understanding why we're in this type of situation. So this isn't new news. Dr. Block and Dr. Wong talked about this already, but there's over 250 million people worldwide affected with hepatitis B. We are in, as they would say, a race for the eradication of hepatitis B in the next 10 or so years, 20 years. And then in order to achieve this elimination, it's truly important to be able to afford medications and get access to them, or else we'll really never achieve that goal. So accessing medications and having affordable treatment options is very important. And just keep in mind, not every single person with hepatitis B needs medication. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Everyone is different based on different lab markers. But there are a few ways that I think we might be able to increase medication access and affordability. The first would have a better understanding of the disease burden. So as a foundation, we're all familiar with how many people are affected, but I think there's a lot of room for education in the community. If we're able to make diagnosis a bit more affordable, maybe more people would then be aware and be able to advocate for themselves. And the more people that need treatment, I think that would increase awareness. Next, if we're able to train more healthcare providers about the diagnosis and treatment of hepatitis B, that too would help us increase the affordability of medication. As Dr. Wong mentioned before, a lot of doctors or prescribers still think that hepatitis B screening is not covered by insurance. And from some prescribers, I've heard that, well, if I screen them, then I don't know what to do next with that result. So I think being able to train them would further increase that awareness. And lastly, this kind of goes with everything, with everyone, what we're all talking about today, but reducing the stigma of the disease would then open people to be able to talk about it more, advocate, and accept it. So these are just a few things that may be able to help us increase access. And I think this chart really hits home to the importance of medication access. If you look at this leftmost bar, we see the number of people that are affected with hepatitis, and this middle bar here shows the number of people that are actually diagnosed. So versus infected and diagnosed, that number is way low. And then out of the number that are diagnosed, the number of people that are actually being treated is very, very low. So there's a lot of room for improvement for us, and it just shows that by having this advocacy and more access for treatment, we can start making a difference. Now, having lower cost medications can also provide us more opportunities. The medications that we use for hepatitis B today are very effective in reducing viral load and keeping that viral load suppressed. And they're relatively safe in terms of side effects, especially for people who are going to be taking them over the long term. This third bullet here in regards to linkage to care, as Dr. Wong mentioned before, our patient navigators are really vital in helping our patients get linked to a doctor, getting linked to a pharmacist, and getting linked to accessible medications. So these are a few of the tools that we might be able to use as well. Now, before we go into the tools that I've used to help us get medications, we'll just briefly touch upon how drug prices are set to give us a bit of an understanding. So it's a very complex system in terms of drug pricing, so I'm not going to go into every little detail. But there are three main players that I'd like to hit home today. The first is the drug company here. Next, we have pharmacy benefit managers, or what I'll refer to as PBMs. And the third would be the insurance plans. Okay, so we'll talk about each one of them individually and how they have an effect on how drug prices are made. So the first I will talk about is the drug companies. The drug companies are the ones that are developing these clinical trials, enrolling patients, and developing treatments, kind of like what Dr. Block was talking about before. Companies select a sticker price based on what they estimate the value of the drug to be. So think about a new car coming out, and it seems like an exorbitant amount of money, but there's a lot in the background that goes into developing that car. The same thing goes in with medications. There are a few factors that come into play. So first, if the drug is very, very effective, odds are it would probably be more costly, right? Next, is it convenient? Is it something that you can take by mouth, one pill once a day? That's pretty convenient. Most people would want to do that over injecting a medication or taking it 3 times a day. Is it new? Is it the first of its class and it's something that's novel, that's never been used before? That might increase the price as well. Are there competitors? Maybe there's not, and this is the only one on the market. That's something that we see a lot with hepatitis B. There are only a few key players, so each of the medications understandably then increase the prices. And lastly, is there a willingness to pay? So what happens if you don't pay? It's a condition where if medication is warranted, then it's very important to be treated. So there's really a willingness to pay there as well. Next, we have the PBMs, or the pharmacy benefit managers. The PBMs are what we consider the middlemen between the drug companies who are making the medications and the pharmacies and the insurance that are supplying the medications into the patient's hands. So the PBMs will buy the medication from the drug companies at a given price. And then the PBMs will then take that medication and supply it to the pharmacies for another given price. Okay? Whatever that price difference is in between the two would be up to debate at that time, depending on the rebates that they're able to get or whatever negotiation or contracts they have at that time. So just remember that there's somebody in the middle that's also negotiating different prices. And then lastly, the insurance, which is a lot of what we deal with as patients, or even in the physician's office that we often are in communication with. So a patient with insurance can pay a copay depending on the tier of the medication. So what we have here is a table that kind of shows how tiers are broken down in. So a lot of plans will have a tier 1 or a cheaper, more affordable product. A lot of times that's a generic or a medication that's been out for a longer time. Tier 2 may be a little bit more expensive, but still relatively affordable. Tier 3, again, the price increases, and these might start turning into medications that are only available as a brand name medication. 4, and now 4 money signs, they're non-preferred, so they'll still cover it and maybe make you pay 75% of the cost. So they'll cover it, but not really in a large portion. And lastly, the more expensive of the tiers would be the specialty medications, a lot of what we'll talk about today.
Can I interrupt for a minute?
Of course.
So how do the health insurance companies decide from 3 to 5 where they put the drugs?
Honestly, it depends on the contract of that plan, so every plan will be different. So if there's, let's say, 3 medications for hepatitis, a lot of times they'll put one as the preferred, and maybe it's the cheaper one, or the one that has more data, or one that's been out for a longer time. They might put that as the least expensive, and then maybe the newer products that that just came out would be more expensive here, because they probably would prefer you to try something that's been on the market for a longer time that would cost them less. Does that seem to answer your question?
Okay, so it just comes down to how new the drug is and.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
So these prefer is all depend on the price from the middleman, from the.
Yeah, so it depends on the price that the drug company sold it to the middleman,
Right, sure.
and then how much the middleman is able to make based off of how much they're giving it to the insurance. So actually, if I advance to the next slide, we kind of pull it all together here. You'll see that it starts, on the left would be you. So you as the patient, maybe you're paying $35. Well, what's gonna happen with that money down the line, okay? So the pharmacy might get half of it or a little bit of that. The PBM will get some of it, the wholesaler that was storing the medications might take some of it, and the drug maker will also take some of it. So when we say, well, $250 for a copay is a lot, which it is, the drug company's not seeing all of that, they're seeing a portion of it, and the insurance gets some, the pharmacy gets some, the wholesaler gets some, etc. Okay? Good questions. Okay, so kind of knowing the complexity of the drug prices, what I'm going to share with you now is what are some ways that we can manage these more expensive copays. As a pharmacist, I use most of these on a day-to-day basis. I have phone apps that have links to this. I'll share the links with you at the end as well. I personally find them very useful, so I hope that you're able to take some of these resources home with you. So what we'll do is go through 5 different aspects of more affordable medications. The first will be manufacturer copay cards, who can use them and who's eligible for them. Then we'll go into copay assistance programs and how that differs. We'll then talk about specialty pharmacies and how they can help you access these medications. And then lastly, we'll go through 2 websites that have a lot of tools, online tools that you can use as well. Alright, so the first that we have are copay cards. What I did was I pulled out 3 of the more common medications that I see in the office, so that's entecavir, Vemlidy, or tenofovir alafenamide, as well as the generic tenofovir disoproxil. So since I see those more commonly, I'll go through the resources that you have to afford those. So first we have Vemlidy, and the manufacturer Gilead is here, so if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I believe they're outside or here in the back.
We're located over here.
I'm sorry.
We're not.
Giving you a shout out. So if you go to the website, all the way on the right, you'll see a savings and support icon. Honestly, if you go to any medication website, usually at the top right, there is savings and support. So even if it's not Hep B related, some other medications that you're on, you can probably use the same resources like this here. So if you click savings and support, it will give you a few options. It'll give you the copay coupon option or the advancing access program, and I'll talk about both of those. So the copay cards, in order to be eligible, you must have your own insurance, okay, your own commercial insurance. Your insurance must contribute in some way to the cost of the medication, and if they do, then this copay card will help pay for a large portion of that cost. Unfortunately, this applies to all or most coupons, but if you have Medicare or Medicaid, you cannot use a copay card. Okay, so keep that in mind. That's a really large barrier for myself as well when somebody has Medicaid. It can be tricky, but not impossible.
Is that because they're already getting such a reduced rate?
They're getting government funding. Yeah. But it's not always that great. Like even with some government funded plans, the copay will still be $200 a month. And that's not affordable for many people, especially living on that type of funding. So when that happens, then I'll usually apply for a copay assistance, and it will help to kind of cover what this doesn't cover. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So what you can do is just fill out an application on this website. It's very basic. It's demographics, your address, phone number. It will ask you, do you have Medicare or Medicaid? And then usually after that, what it'll do is generate an image of a card like this, and it will have codes here that you can bring to your pharmacy, or you can even call your pharmacy and just give them those numbers. You don't even have to print it and bring it. A lot of times I'll generate the code online and then just call the pharmacy and, hey, I have the BIN number and the ID number, and they can put it in right for you, okay? Okay, so I got too ahead of myself. So this is what the image may look like. Tell your pharmacy that you have a BIN number, a PCN, a group number, and an ID number. They'll know what that means. They'll take it over the phone and apply it to your copay. So, like as we were asked before, what happens if you don't, you aren't eligible for a copay card or you have Medicare and Medicaid? The next step then would be to apply for a copay assistance program. So these programs are run by pharmaceutical companies, and what they do is help provide free or inexpensive medications for people with lower incomes. Okay? This, again, like I said, is good for people who may not apply or be eligible for coupons, but keep in mind they do have different eligibility criteria, and we'll talk about that. I think I have an example of a form on the next slide. So what most people don't realize is that you yourself can sign up. There are copay assistance programs for many different disease states. So there are copay assistance programs for hepatitis B, but also for other conditions like osteoporosis. I've seen some for migraines, so don't feel like this is strictly for hepatitis B. If you go to this website, you'll be able to see where you can sign up. Okay? Just keep in mind, you also have to have insurance. Okay? You have to have a confirmed hepatitis B diagnosis, reside in the United States, and have an income level less than 400% of the poverty level. At the end of the presentation, I have the table that will help you figure out if you match that. From my experience, I've found that many people do qualify for this unless they make over like 100 or 120,000. It depends on the situation. Most elderly people who are on Social Security will also qualify, or people who live alone more times than not qualify. Alright, so this is the step-by-step on how to sign up. So you go to the website, click online application, click on the patients, begin the application process, and then you can submit it right then and there. You'll also get notified immediately if you qualify or if you don't, which is really good because I'm in many situations where people will say, I have one pill left, what can I do? So, I can usually get this done in a few minutes. It will then give you an award letter with a card, the similar way that the copay cards provide you with that information. So you can give it over the phone or you can bring it to your pharmacy, and then that should be able to fill some of those gaps from the copays. Okay. Any questions about copay assistance before I move on?
How much does it cover?
Good question. It depends on the disease state that you have. So I think some of them will cover like $2,000, some of them will cover $4,000 for the whole year. It really depends on how much funding the foundation has at that time. So
you will know when you get a card?
I'm sorry?
When you print an award letter, you will know?
You will know. Yes. So what they'll say is you've been awarded $2,000. So then, well, if the copay card says that my copay is still going to be $200, I think it'll cover most of the year by that way. And then some foundations will let you apply again, because at the end of the year, if maybe they have extra funding, sometimes they'll increase that limitation, or if they don't have many people who actually take out the funds and use them, then they'll have some left over. So you can always apply again. Good question. Yes?
I don't know if you're going to cover this, and if you are, I will stop. But nonprofit pharmacies, I don't know if you have. So there's something just very recent. Just 2 weeks ago, we started a new relationship with Outreach RX, and they just, as of last week, have added hepatitis B treatments to there. And it's not a copay, it's actually a nonprofit pharmacy. And so tenofovir would be $25 a month, and entecavir is $45 a month. And the same thing, you don't have to have insurance, but you do have to be up to 400%. So a family of 4, it would be $120,000. So very similar. And if you just go to outreachrx.org, it's the first nonprofit pharmacy I've ever heard of that includes hepatitis B.
Okay, I'll have to add that to my list of resources, because something kind of similar to that, through RWJ Barnabas Health, we have, it's similar to like a charity care what you hear in the hospital. So let's say you're in the hospital and you have to go home on an expensive medication. A lot of times the hospital will just give you like the first 2 weeks or the first 3 weeks of the medication and cover that cost. We also have what's called Dispensary of Hope, where if you fall under the same poverty guidelines, they'll just give you the medication as long as it's on their formulary. So I guess it would depend on what's on there, but that's really good on
Is that a national program?
It's national, yeah, and there's no eligibility requirements other than the 400%, which I thought we've never seen this before, so we were really
That's
excited.
really good.
Yeah.
Sure, was it Outreach RX or RX Outreach? I think it was.
One or the other.
Yeah.
That's all
If
right.
Try
Outreach
this one,
RX
try the
doesn't
other.
work, then which one?
It's on our
Oh,
flyer, so
there you
yeah.
go. It's in your folder.
But it's RX Outreach.
It's RX Outreach.
Great, thank you for sharing
Sure.
that. Alright, so next we'll talk about the Baraclude patient assistance programs. I find that less of our patients ask about brand name Baraclude or have issues getting this medication because it's available generically. But I did want to share this with you in this situation that maybe somebody can only take a brand name medication. So if you go to the website here, you are able to apply for their patient assistance program, kind of the same way as the previous medication. Just keep in mind that they only award up to $400 per month, and the medication is at least twice that per month. So
How much is a month?
it's about $1,200 a month, if I'm not
Is that the
mistaken.
generic? Is
This is for the brand's name.
Right, but you know it's generic, so.
Right.
It's not
I-
an HU.
Yeah, it's not any cheaper.
It's generic.
Yeah. From my experience, I've had some people say that they can only take brand name because whether it's they can tolerate it better or whatever it is, everyone responds differently. I have had situations where people say they can only take Baraclude only, which can really limit your resources. But for that reason, I still share this. So just keep in mind that they do have patient assistance available, but they only award up to $400 a month. So in that case, it might be more fortuitous to you to use the generic product at that time. Okay. And since we're on the patient assistance program part of the presentation, we talked about the Felony copay cards. So if that doesn't cover a majority of your copay or you do not qualify, then you can also apply for the Felony patient assistance program. This patient assistance program is called Advancing Access, and I've had really good success with this as long as the patient obviously meets the criteria. So what you would do, you can fill this out yourselves. This form will just pop up. It's a PDF. You can print it out. You just write patient name, like demographics, address, all that kind of stuff. You write your insurance. Again, you have to have some sort of insurance. And I think you have to provide proof of income, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, they have to have proof of your annual household income. So I usually find that requesting that information from the patient is my rate limiting factor, because I can fill out everything for them or help them, and then they have to dig out some tax forms, and that kind of takes some time. So if you do think that this is something that would apply for you, or you think that maybe a friend or a family member could benefit from this, I would encourage you to start digging up that proof of income sooner than later. So in addition to copay cards and copay assistance programs, my next secret weapon are specialty pharmacies. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with specialty pharmacies, they only dispense certain medications, usually medications that are more expensive. and used for maybe less common conditions. So hepatitis B, hepatitis C, they do osteoporosis, HIV, multiple sclerosis, some things that are less common. There's no extra cost to use a specialty pharmacy. So I always encourage people, if you're on a medication like this, utilize these resources. They're also really great at helping to provide you with resources as well. So specialty pharmacies hire clinical pharmacists who are familiar with the resources like I am, and they will also help you to apply for these foundations or copay cards. I've had really good experience with them. Sometimes I'll call and say, oh, I sent over a prescription for brand name Felony. They're like, oh, I already downloaded the coupon, the copay is $0. Like, I've had good success with it, so I encourage you to use one. On the next slide, so RWJ Barnabas Health owns our own specialty pharmacy called Qualitas Specialty Pharmacy. They have clinical pharmacists there that I collaborate closely with, and they provide a lot of services that I think many pharmacies don't provide. For example, they'll call you and ask how you're tolerating the medicine, if you've had any side effects. They run drug interactions for you. They do have a quick turnaround time. Sometimes it's like within the same day, which is amazing. I do feel confident that when I use a specialty pharmacy, they're giving me the lowest possible out-of-pocket price. Especially when working with them, I can really trust their final cost. They also assist with refills. A lot of the times they'll call me and say, so-and-so just picked up their last month. Can you send over more refills? That will help us avoid going long periods of time without medications. They have 24-hour on-call pharmacists, so if you ever think the medication's treating you a little weird or you can't tell if it's a side effect, call them. And lastly, they have free delivery, so that's always a bonus. And Qualitas is here today. I think they're actually right outside, in case anyone of you were interested. Next, the website I use a lot is called Needymeds. Needymeds is like a website that houses all of the resources in one place. So if you go, I think I have a screenshot from it. Okay, yeah. So if you have a medication and you type it into the website, you'll be able to select one there on the left. And what it'll do is show you, I don't know if bear food, but these are just snippets. It will show you what options you have. So if you typed in Felony, it'll say it offers a copay card, patient assistance program, here's the phone number, it'll take you to the website. So in case any of the previous slides are kind of confusing and you forget, Needymeds is really good. And this also kind of answers one of the gentleman's questions. It might say provides a maximum up to how much thousands per year, so $3,600 per year. And if you need more, you can contact that phone number. So I do really like to use this website.
Do you need insurance for this one or no?
It depends. So usually it will tell you the requirements, but no, this website can be used for anyone, regardless if you have insurance or not. It will just tell you what options you have. So like if you don't have insurance, you can use this, or if you do have insurance, you can use that.
There's many of them said that they need you to have some kind of insurance, right?
Most of them do.
Yes,
Most of them do, unless they're nonprofit, like was mentioned before, or if you're going to use a coupon, you do, or a copay assistance program, you usually do.
Yeah, what about the insurance doesn't cover?
If the insurance doesn't cover it all,
Yeah.
then that's okay. You just have to also have insurance. It really depends. Like every medication is going to have different eligibility criteria, so it's really difficult to say. Most times, what I've seen is if the insurance doesn't cover it at all, but you have insurance, the program will still cover it. So I still try. Honestly, when in doubt, I still try. Like if I think the patient's income is still higher, I'll still try. Or if sometimes I'll still fill it out if they have Medicare or Medicaid and see what happens. Sometimes the copay assistance program will also, if it's not enough to cover the whole year, I'll still use it and then apply again. Because a lot of times when we're in these types of resources, we're like scraping up anything we can. So If you can combine them in any way possible, I think that's a good way to.
Question.
Yes, Dr. Jack.
Sometimes, you know, have a middle-class patient who doesn't quite qualify for low income and is in between jobs or lost a job,
Mhm.
and will ask me about buying medication from Canada, for example. How does that work in this case for Hep B medication?
So a lot of patients do ask about buying medications from Canada, or even like we see a lot ask about buying them from Asia because they're more affordable. But honestly, I think the regulations are less strict there. So like when they're purchased from Asia, we've seen people not have as suppressed viral loads as much, which could be concerning because then we can increase risk of resistance. So I feel like the right answer as a pharmacist to say would have to be no. But I know that it would be that or no treatment, so it's kind of. I
What
don't know
about the
what
Canadian
the answer.
regulations, for the medication?
I think those would be more trustworthy. I don't know. I don't want to give an answer without knowing fully.
Okay.
So, good question though. Okay, good. And then on the website too, they also offer a variety of cards that you can print out. So these are also like copay cards, but if you're using one from the manufacturer, like we talked about before, these won't qualify. It's just like an added bonus if you really need something. And you can use these for other medications as well that you're on, not just hepatitis B. And then one of the last resources that I use a lot is called GoodRx. You probably see a lot of commercials for it on TV. I have the app on my phone. I use this almost every day. GoodRx pretty much will tell you can input the name of a medication, and it will show you the pharmacies in your area and how much each pharmacy will charge you for that medication. So I think I have pictures on the next slide. Okay. So, for example, if you put in a medication here, I put in entecavir for 30 tablets, so you have to put in the right number of tablets. Is what I found. It has to be exact to the T. So if your doctor writes for like a 90-day supply and you fill this out for 30, it just has to match, so keep that in mind. So if you put in 30 tablets for entecavir, if I go to the Acme, I can get it for the most affordable price. That's $64 with the coupon, and you just get the coupon here. This is, for the most part, I've found this to be reliable too. I haven't had any issues with like inconsistencies. As long as, like I said, the prescription matches what you put in, because the coupon code will match the prescription to this. I think I have another example too. Okay, here. So this is for some of the other medications. So we talked about entecavir, $64. Tenofovir, the generic, you could get for $50. I think that's at a Costco maybe. The Costco usually has the best price. So I personally think $52 for a month if you have absolutely no insurance. This is, I think, a reasonable price if you really have to pay completely out of pocket. I would utilize this coupon. And then you can see for more brand name medication, of course, the cost would be more expensive, but at least you can see that you have different options and you can go to certain pharmacies based on that.
Actually, I have patients who have a prescription plan, and instead of using their own prescription
Yeah.
plan, they just use this.
Yep.
They say it's cheaper.
It is. A lot of times I've seen with certain medications, like erectile dysfunction medications, like they won't cover any, like insurance won't cover it, and then if I put it in here, it's like $7 for like a 4-week supply. I'm like, okay, just use this. So I think when in doubt, if the insurance does cover it and gives you maybe like a $75 copay, maybe just put it in GoodRx and see how much it would come to with the coupon, because if there's a discount, I would rather use the coupon. And it doesn't matter if you have insurance or not either. Good. So we talked a lot about different resources, websites, applications. There's kind of a lot of numbers that were floating around. So what I have for you here, if you want to like take a picture of it or write them down, but these are the websites that we talked about today. So we have the websites for the medications, Needymeds, GoodRx, and then some other copay assistance programs, and resources that can provide you with some assistance too. I think I went over time, I'm sorry. Oh, and they're also also on the handouts that Michaela has. They're probably floating around.
It's not in this pocket. Where's that?
Oh, good. I'm sorry?
Are the handouts up on the table?
Michaela's giving it out.
She's giving them out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, those are going on.
So now we're gonna lead it on to,
And also the RX outreach she was talking about.
yes, yeah, I
think
want one of
that
those
is
for
on the
myself.
handout.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, guys.
Pharmacy do you work at?
I don't work at a pharmacy, I work at a center for human health, so I can
What is that?
She's the brain of our center.
I work with doctors and
She's the brain power.
Okay, listen, no, you're fine, you're fine. I need to ask you to do me a favor. I believe it's a Thursday. If you- big thing, the way that's the next thing.
So this is all around right now.
Love this. Let's do some conversation. Serious conversation. For me, I don't know what you ask you.
Alright. Yes.
Yes.
Yep, they're still coming around, so you guys all can have
I
them.
see, I see. I was around patient.
So, hi everybody. I'm Michaela Jackson, and I am the Public Health Program and Outreach Coordinator for the Hepatitis B Foundation. And so we heard a lot about the technicality and how the pharmacies do everything, but now we're going to talk a little bit about research that we're doing regarding advocacy and the fairness of accessing treatment. So what just went around is kind of a summary of both Alyssa and I's presentation. So it gives you an overview of what adverse drug sharing is, which is what I'm talking about. And on the back, at the bottom, you can find all the websites that Alyssa had. So it's just really easy access. You guys can just type in the websites and find everything. So, am I doing it? Oh no. Okay. Hey, so I'm sure you guys are familiar with this, that we talked a lot about this today, but as a little bit of background, hepatitis B is the world's most common liver affection. It's responsible for up to 60% of all liver cancer cases worldwide. It is 100 times more infectious than HIV, and it disproportionately impacts Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, and African immigrants, specifically in the United States. So, what is our problem that we're dealing with today? So the Hepatitis B Foundation answers a lot of patient calls internationally, and lately we've been seeing a large increase in calls regarding medication access and affordability, specifically within the United States. So if you look at the gray box, it might be kind of hard to see. In May 2018, we really didn't see anything. For a couple months, it was really small, and then you hit January, February, March this year, you can see it really expands. Those are the patient calls we've been getting regarding specific access to treatment. So now that make up about 10% of our calls. We've been getting calls, people saying they have to meet $4,000 deductibles before any sort of co-payment or sharing begins. Copay is like $1,200 a month, and when you're in treatment for a very long time, for years, this is not sustainable. It's very difficult to keep up with this, and so we knew that this needed to be addressed. So, under the Affordable Care Act, there are consumer protections for people living with chronic diseases and other things. So the Essential Health Benefits section, which is 1557, protects you from discriminatory plan design by insurance companies. So what does this mean? This leads to adverse drug sharing. So basically it means that any unfair ways for insurance companies to place the cost of medications from themselves onto the consumer is illegal. They should not be doing that, and yet that's exactly what we're finding. And how are they doing this? So through high co-insurance rates, specifically for a majority of treatments regarding hepatitis B, generic treatments with really high cost shares. Generic treatments should obviously be affordable, like Elisa said. These are ones that have been out for a while. There's no way that they should be as expensive as some plans are making them be. Placing most or all hepatitis B treatments on a very high tier, and requiring mandatory physician's approval for the first line or first line or preferred treatments by doctors and consumers, or generic treatments. So those are just some of the ways that insurance companies are going around the law.
we doing about this? We've been performing state analyses from across the nation for silver level plans on the federal exchange, specifically for 2019, for the 12 FDA approved treatments. And so this graph just shows you a little bit of what we're looking at. We're looking at any pharmacy restrictions. We're looking at deductibles for plans. The tiering, so is it copay, is it coinsurance? And we're looking at any drugs that aren't covered by specific plans. So as you can see here, we're kind of highlighting where generics are in high tiers. You can see 3 generics, so pretty much most of the generics for this plan, actually all the generics for this plan, are not most of them, are with either $700 maximum bill before anything kicks in and 50% co-insurance. So that can easily get very expensive for an individual. So we're looking specifically at Pennsylvania right now. So you can see about 83% of plans placed at least one generic drug on a high tier, which means that they have really high cost insurance. And the other plans had, 93% of plans had co-insurance rates for their higher tiers. So coincidentally, this is also where we found a majority of the hepatitis B treatments on high tiers. So for Pennsylvania specifically, what was good was that TDF, so tenofovir risperdal plans, which is a first-line treatment, so it's good that they have access to that. However, while most plans were deductibles were under the national average, they were still well over $3,000. So the national average is about $3,900, which can get easily expensive. And then they also had 50% co-insurance rates for all their high tiers, including with generics. So New York was a better state for plans, but also they had 64 plans, whereas Pennsylvania had a little bit fewer. So they had 67, so still well over half of their insurance companies placed one plan or more with generic drugs on higher tiers. Then we also found that at least 81%, which this one is a good thing, had co-payments instead of co-insurance for higher tiers. So that is making things a little bit more accessible. Yes, so the good thing about New York is that many had individual deductibles well below the national average. So these were around $1,200, which is much better than trying to pay $3,000, $4,000, and most of them had co-insurance. However, at least most plans had at least one preferred treatment. So treatments that are preferred by doctors and consumers for their effectiveness and other things of that nature on a high tier, which gets costly. And again, the majority of hepatitis B treatments were more expensive. Yeah?
The copay is a definite amount, and the co-insurance is by percentage.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, what's the difference copay and co-insurance?
Oh, sorry, good question. So a copay would be, in the analysis, it will be a dollar sign. So you're going to be paying a set amount when you're getting it out. Co-insurance is that they're splitting the cost with you. So say a drug is $900 a month. You're paying, if it's 50% co-insurance, you're paying half of that. So
A
it's
percent.
So per month, it makes a big difference whether you're paying $20 or $450 a month. Yeah, so co-insurance is a way that they're definitely, it's a clear indicator that they're shifting the cost onto the patient or consumer. So right here in New Jersey, we looked at 11 plans, and New Jersey actually only had 3 plans underneath the federal exchange. So 83% of the generic brands were placed on a higher tier, and actually all plans that we looked at had co-insurance rates for the higher tiers. So again, it's that splitting cost, which is a bad sign. So underneath that, you can see that all plans had co-insurance rates of 40 or 50%. There was like really no in between. So 40% or 50% of a $900 drug, $1,200 drug is not cheap at all. And again, so most of the brand name treatments were on the higher tiers. In some other cases in other states, they kind of vary. So if you have to take a first-line treatment or a brand name treatment, like Elisa was saying, this is very expensive for you. And there's not really, since most of the deductibles don't kick in until you hit that cost share. I mean, most of the cost sharing doesn't kick in until you hit that deductible. You're really forced to pay a lot of money out of pocket. So what did we find overall? So it shows how it varies, but you can see again where most of the concentration is. It's between $3,000 and $5,000. This varies again state by state, which kind of makes things a lot more complicated. There's few regulations, but that's again one of the bigger issues. So there's a general trend of requiring deductibles to be met before any sort of cost sharing begins, again on those high tiers. Also, the standard requirement for drug coverage, which means it's a benchmark plan, indicating that that's the model plan that the state should be following with restrictions, regulations, any sort of thing. That should be met. Most of them are not by regular plans. So first line treatments were inadequately covered. So again, those first line treatments are treatments that are preferred for their effectiveness and other things of that nature. And that different drug doses and forms were in different plans. So for the same drug, so say entecavir, if it was in a powder versus tablet form, or if it was 150 milligrams versus 350 milligrams, even though it's the same drug, you would find them placed on different tiers. And when we spoke to people about this, and experts, they said that this is due to the different forms and dosages costing more. So again, those 300 milligrams or whatever that's more expensive, that cost gets put onto the consumer. And if you look at GoodRx or any of the websites that were listed with Elisa, you can type it in and you will see that that does occur. And this is an unfair cost and illegal. So what are other common barriers that we saw? Prior authorization. So requiring mandatory physician sign-off for certain drugs, including generic drugs, which should be easily accessible. No mail order option, so if you have difficulty getting to the pharmacy and you can't really get your treatment as needed if there's no mail order option, or if there is a mail order option, they were generally priced 2 to 3 times higher costing than the retail price. So if they do have that option, now it's becoming a lot more expensive for you to access it, even though it might not be physically possible for you to. And so, what are the conclusions? So despite the Affordable Care Act, we are definitely seeing adverse drug tiering occurring across the states. So we have about 11 analyses done, and we're working on many others right now, and we've found evidence of this adverse drug tiering in every single state. We've had patients calling us, telling us that they had to stop taking their medication, or they're only taking it sporadically because they cannot afford their treatment and these monthly costs. This greatly increases their chance of liver cancer and liver disease, and we don't want that to happen. So we really need hepatitis B treatment to be affordable, and not only affordable, but accessible to the people that impacts the most.
Can you do me a favor? Can you go on one slide back?
Yeah. This one or?
So this one. So let me say a story. 39 years old, on medication, well controlled. He decided to stop the medicine. So we see him in the clinic and he's yellow like a banana. The viral load was to the roof. Guess what happened? We started him on medication, but it was already too late. So he just got a liver transplant. So this is really detrimental. People cannot stop it. And you know, even if there is a financial issue, companies always can come with alternative plans and provide this medication. Because the best liver for you is your own. And there is a myth that if you take the medications, cancer will never come. So I still remember my Filipino nurse, 52 years old, that she was on a registration trial with entecavir back then. She was very well controlled. She started having some chest pain, came to Broward General. I was in Florida back then. And everybody thought that this is pneumonia. So they got a CAT scan of the chest, and guess what did they find? A 5-centimeter tumor sitting in the liver. So even on treatment. So that's why we need to keep on checking these things.
think,
I'm sorry for the intervention, but you know,
no.
this is what I'm doing all day long, and I have to say that hepatitis C is like a cookie cutter nowadays. That's it. You zap it, boom. Hepatitis B, it's science. That's why we have not unlocked
Yeah.
this conundrum yet. So, but more to come.
Well, thank you. Those stories are very good, and they're really nice reminders for us that, you know, treatment is not money, it's affecting people's lives and their necessities.
So I was gonna say, what can be done to talk to the insurance companies about the unfair practices?
So actually, Catherine met an insurance she worked with Independence Blue Cross in Philly after we signed into Pharmacies, and she wanted to know more about it, so we sent it to her, and she stopped responding to us. So yeah, so insurance.
Insurance representatives?
Yeah, insurance recalls actually has the worst plans for Pennsylvania regarding that was actually the one that I used as an example. Independence Blue Cross. Their plans are actually some of the worst for hepatitis B treatments. And it's just, yeah, it's finding people who will want to continue the conversation with us after we start. So we're basing our analysis on the HIV/AIDS Institute, which they did this with HIV treatment down in Florida. So they did an analysis of 12 states, and specifically TDF. What they found was based on higher tiers. And they ended up suing after they, you know, published and did their research, and these companies, instead of, you know, letting this lawsuit go on, they decided, okay, you know what, we were wrong, as they are, and they moved the TDF down to the lower tiers.
But to clarify, those were the health insurance companies that were sued, not the drug companies.
Yes.
Yeah, they sued the state health insurance commissioner to then, who was in charge of setting those stage
Yeah.
for their, so they sued, with HHS, they sued the state health insurance commission of Florida, right? Is that right?
Yes, and so it put pressure on those companies because the companies were involved obviously deeply when they're hearing all about this and consumers are hearing about this. And yeah, so TDF now you will see on tiers 1 and 2 because it also treats HIV. But now we have other chronic illnesses that they're doing the same things with because they're the ones bringing it up. And that's why we're doing the background research to bring it up to them and get them to listen.
So ultimately, we have to sue.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the medicines that are generic now, are they very expensive to make?
I know they're expensive to buy in some cases,
Right.
I don't know if they're
That's
expensive to
right.
make. I don't know. Does that mean?
I mean, to make tenofovir,
To make
it's a
it
little
generic.
complicated.
Mhm.
I mean, it's not as easy as some of the other drugs, and there's a little more to it.
It's supposed to be cheaper because it's open for competition, right? So it's not just the drug
So
manufacturer.
maybe given time, the price would come down more.
Yeah, but now the problem is that TDF it's the stated first line drug, but TAF is actually better for women with hepatitis B because it removes the risk of developing osteoporosis.
Yeah.
And then, so now TAF is the preferred drug, but that's the one that costs.
Yeah.
TAF is
So after
almost
Felony,
always-
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
so
almost always
as you can see, this one doesn't even cover it.
Yeah.
And when it is, because it is brand name still, you're gonna find it at the 50% of insurance, 40%, 30%.
But
Yeah,
Michelle,
that
what-
is about.
So this was very interesting, but what I'm really finding, what is a revelation, you're saying that you, in your opinion, the insurance companies or the insurance commissioners are intentionally circumventing the
Yes,
law to keep
because-
prices high, not just that this is the way it is and it's unfair. The way it is by regulation isn't necessarily unfair. We can work within that, but but these companies or the commissioners are exploiting and
Yeah,
deceiving.
so underneath the actual Americans with Disabilities Act and the Affordable Care Act, it specifically calls out in sections that people under, yeah, so under the essential health benefits, and there are a couple other sections that specifically states that people with chronic illnesses, along with other discriminatory things like age, gender, things like that, cannot be discriminated against by